I keep having to adjust my camera because if I'm not careful, it focuses on this statue behind me instead of my face, and then I'm kind of out of focus. Right, does that kind of cover it? Okay, hopefully we're good. Alright, so you know why you're here, you've read the title, it's time for a book haul. I actually have quite the array of books I am super excited for, both that I've bought and been sent by publishers, so I really just wanted to sit down and chat about them because they're looking at me and they need to be discussed. So I'm actually going to start with the biggest one first because that's really staring at me, and it's this thing. So this was sent to me by the publishers, and it's Written Treasures, 50 manuscripts from medieval Europe, and it is exactly what it says on the tin. It is a deep dive into 50 manuscripts from medieval Europe. Self-explanatory really, but if like me you have spent the past few years becoming increasingly obsessed, shall we say, with medieval marginalia, with bizarre looking cats and snails wielding swords, then you'll appreciate how cool this is. And then there's also just the fact that so many medieval manuscripts are how the folklore and mythology that I study and write about are preserved, so it's really cool. I know, for example, there is a medieval manuscript version of Aesop's Fables in here, which is super cool, that I've had a look at, and quite a few others that look absolutely fascinating. It's basically a coffee table book which I have flipped through. I've not read in its entirety, but I've read parts of, and I am obsessed. I am very much enjoying looking at it. It's one of my favourite kind of coffee table books, one that combines sort of visual culture and art with history. I mean, look at this. This is a depiction of Theseus and the Minotaur, except that I have to say the Minotaur in the centre of this labyrinth looks a lot like a centaur, which is really interesting. It's just fascinating really, and some manuscripts are far more about the typography and the text, whereas some, like I said, have a lot of illustrations in them. I'm trying to like find some here. Here's one of the constellations. Like, how cool is this? This is so cool. And it's kind of thing which I've like read about briefly and looked at little bits and pieces online, especially since I did write like a medieval fantasy novel. I was definitely thinking of these kind of books when I wrote about Vivian and Morgan reading spell books, but I didn't own a book like this, so I'm obsessed. I'm so grateful to the publisher for sending it to me, and if this sounds like your cup of tea, definitely check it out. Another book I was sent by the publisher, which is a proof, and I have to say the final cover for this book is stunning. I'll insert a little picture on the screen now so you can see it. Kinda might need to get that as well as having the proof. But this is The Lost Folk, A Journey from the Forgotten Past to the Emerging Future of Folk by Lally Macbeth. So folk obviously means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, but generally in that sense of like folklore and folk tradition, it's kind of just talking about like everyday ordinary people and the way they interact with each other and their environment and the different traditions that rise out of those kind of communities. And I think this is such an interesting topic to write about, not just from the perspective of folklore, but folk, the people behind all of that stuff that we're so obsessed with, I know, on my channel, folklore, etc. It specifically focuses in on Britain, folk culture in Britain, and I know I'm gonna adore it. The next book I bought myself, I actually pre-ordered this book, that's how excited I was for it. I have been desperate for this book since I read the first one last year, and I was like eagerly awaiting that sequel. So I need my husband to set aside whatever he's reading and to get to this with me because we read book 1 together. So we obviously have to read book 2 together, and that is Scotch on the Rocks by Elliot Fletcher. So this is book 2 in the McCabe Brothers series, which is a contemporary romance series set on the Isle of Skye in Scotland, following, well, different women with the brothers of the McCabe family. And this one has such an interesting premise because it's not a second chance romance, but it is a chance romance between the eldest brother and his younger brother's ex-fiancée. So he has always, it seems, fancied her, but obviously she was at one point dating his brother. He broke off the engagement, leaving her not particularly inclined towards his family, and he's just been pining after her from a distance until now, and I'm so excited to see how that works out because obviously there's a lot of complicated family background that's going to be at play. Oh, okay, so I'm really excited about these next two proofs. So I just feel really lucky that I managed to grab these. They were fresh out the box. I was actually at the Forbidden Planet head offices doing an interview for their YouTube channel, which if it's up I'll link it down below, but Forbidden Planet have a fantastic YouTube channel where they talk about sci-fi and fantasy books, and they are in the same building as Titan, who are one of my favourite publishers. They publish some some of my favourite fantasy and horror, and they had 2 new horror proofs in the building when I was there, so they very kindly gave them to me. One of which is House of Idol by Delilah S. Dawson. And this is about Angelina, who is a musician, who basically gets the opportunity to go to a very exclusive retreat where, you know, you don't have to do anything for yourself, everything is taken care of, and you can just let your creativity flow and relax and get everything you need to do done, which sounds amazing, right? Like, I want to go, except I think it's going to be a lot darker than she expects it to be. And then one of my favourite horror authors, Rachel Harrison's new book, Play Nice. So just for reference, these are both out in September. And this one I think is going to be a really unique take on the haunted house. Well, it's going to be Rachel Harrison's take, and I think she does do really clever things with traditional and common horror tropes. She does really interesting things. She makes them very relevant, and I think her take on the haunted house is going to be super, super interesting. Okay, we then have a book which was a present. I haven't even taken it out of the cellophane yet, which I should probably do now. This is the latest book in Ruby Dixon's Ice Planet Barbarians series to be published in paperback. So if you don't know, this was a series that was originally self-published, and Penguin have been in the past few years releasing these lovely illustrated cover editions in paperback. How on earth do I get into this? And I am collecting these slowly. I've read them all, I've read some of them multiple times on my Kindle, and I'm just like over time, you know, gradually picking up each one in paperback in these lovely new editions because I do adore them. And I was looking at this one in Forbidden Planet in London and pondering buying it because it did come with some cool exclusive merch, which is this awesome little sticker and a bookmark of the characters. But I thought, you know what, no Jean, you're not actually caught up on the paperbacks. I think I have the first 4 or 5, but this book, Barbarians Hope, comes much later in this series, so I thought, oh, I'll resist. And then I turned round, and what has my friend Tasman done but buy me it as a present? It is actually disgusting how lovely my friends are and how wonderful and thoughtful Tasman is. Unacceptable. So now I have this lovely new edition, which is actually signed. I think it's my first signed Ruby Dixon book, which is super cool. It's got this book plate inside, and I am of course looking forward to revisiting this couple when I get around to it. Okay, so the next proof is just super exciting, but not because it's a proof, but because of the book, which it is, and the fact that this is coming out this month, in fact in July, so you can all get your hands on it super soon. And that is Not Quite Dead Yet by Holly Jackson. So you probably best know Holly Jackson for her YA thrillers. She's particularly famous for The Good Girl's Guide to Murder, but she has a few other titles as well, and I love them all. I love her thrillers, and this is her first adult thriller. I am so excited. Just given how creative and twisty-turny her YA thrillers are, I know this is going to be absolutely phenomenal, and I'm so excited to see her working in the adult genre now as well. It's also a very unique premise in that it's about somebody trying to solve their own murder. They are about to die, and they're trying to figure out who it is that has killed them, which is slightly bizarre. Don't know how it's going to work out, but I'm excited to see. Back to the topic of Forbidden Planet, however, I did actually buy myself 2 books from Forbidden Planet, and those are both manhwa. So I've been recently getting into manhwa. I've been reading a series called Villains Are Destined to Die, which I really, really love. I'm on volume 5, I believe, of that, and I thought, I need to try some more manhwa. So I went to the section Forbidden Planet, I read the backs of, I think, most of the series they had on the shelf. It wasn't a huge selection, and picked 2 that I thought sounded interesting. I actually know nothing about these other than what they say on the blurb. I just let myself get excited about them based on discovering them in the bookshop that day, so I'm looking forward to reading them. Hopefully I will love them too. We have Beware the Villainess, and much like Villains Are Destined to Die, this one is working on the common trope in manhwa and manga, which is that our protagonist ends up in either a fictional world from a novel or a video game that they're a fan of, and they end up having to play the role of the villainess, and it makes for incredibly entertaining storytelling. So that's exactly what happens here, but the difference is that our villainess character decides that she is going to protect the heroine of the storyline, and she's going to fend off all of the useless suitors and make sure none of them are dastardly or deceitful, which I just think is so much fun. We love women coming together and supporting one another. And then we have one that I just thought had a hilarious title, and that is My Secretly Hot Husband, which is just brilliant. I mean, yeah, like what a title, I absolutely love that. And in this one we have a protagonist who's reborn into a fantasy world, and she's married off to this masked man who it turns out is secretly hot. Honestly, do I know anything else about it? No, but it sounded fun. The illustrations look really fantastic, and I'm looking forward to seeing what it's all about. Okay, so the next book I was sent by the publisher, Michael Joseph, and it is without a doubt my favourite cover of the year. Like, have you seen how beautiful this is? I'm not sure any cover is going to beat it this year, if I'm being perfectly honest, and that is Raincloud Palace by Philippa Rice. I desperately want this printed off on my wall. I just think it's so beautiful. It's giving like never-ending story and like cozy pastel fantasy, and that's everything I love. So yeah, I'm really excited for this, not just based on the cover, because the blurb also sounds phenomenal. We follow Evie Trio, who spends her days making and selling magical items at the Magpie's Nest. An enchanted feather that keeps off the rain and a mechanical owl who can read aloud are among the unique inventions. But everything changes when Evie's abilities catch the attention of the occupants of the nearby Raincloud Palace. She is soon whisked away to become the resident spellsmith. The sweeping magical corridors, delicious feasts and attentions of charming oracle's apprentice are a far cry from her previous life at her little shop. But she has been brought to the palace for a reason. A hungry dragon circles the castle looking for a soul to devour, its sights set on the kingdom's princess, Hadriana. All hope falls to Evie and her marvellous creations to rid the realm of this perilous creature. But can she magic up the victory needed and be the hero she never thought she could be? Another gorgeous and pink new hardback that was sent to me by the publisher, this time Orbit, is The Incandescent by Emily Tesh. And this book is set at a magical school, but it is not about one of the students, it is about one of the teachers, which I love. We need more magic school books about the teachers. Like, that is such a great concept. I love that. And in particular, our teacher, Walden, I believe, has to protect her student body from incoming demon attacks. I'm here for it, and I'm excited to see what happens. I was then sent When Devils Sing by Zan Kaur, which is published by Pan McMillan, and I love this green colour. I've noticed a few books using this kind of luminescent green in their covers in the past year or so, and I think it's very eye-catching. I really enjoy it. I also love the kind of elevator pitch one-line summary at the top of the blurb here, which is that every 13 summers 3 devils come down to Georgia. Anyway, it's one of those summers, and the granddaughter of a motel owner, Nira, finds one of their previously occupied rooms empty with only a smattering of blood left behind. Now, disappearances are not uncommon given the situation, but I guess she has a pre-existing relationship with this person who went missing, Dawson, and she is determined to find out if they are dead or alive. And I am very specifically interested in reading more books which deal with devils and demons. So don't know what quite kicked off this interest, but it is something that I have been seeking out in my literature and my films recently, so I'm sure I'm gonna love this one. Then a book I bought myself, and that is The Corner That Held Them by Sylvia Townsend Warner. So this book is a modern classic from the 1940s, and I first read Sylvia Townsend Warner last year with her Lolly Willows book, which has quickly become one of my favourite books of all time. I think it's absolutely spectacular, so of course I want to read more by her, and this is one I've heard a lot about. I don't believe it's like super action-packed, which wouldn't surprise me given Lolly Willows. I think it's a sort of slice of life, slice of history book about a convent of nuns and what they get up to in the nunnery. That's what I'm expecting, at least. And then I do have to mention these 3 books which came out in May and made their way onto my bookcases in May, but I will acknowledge ahead of time that I wrote them all, so there's your pre-warning. I did write or edit these books, but they did come out recently and make their way onto my bookcases recently, so I'm still counting it. So of course I've talked about it numerous times, but my debut traditionally published standalone fantasy novel came out with Michael Joseph in May, The Lady of the Lake, and it has been the most surreal experience, I have to say, since this book came out. It has been so like heartwarming and touching to receive messages from people who really enjoyed the book, and also to just hear from you that you're excited to read the book. Like, obviously I poured a lot of heart and soul and love into writing this, so to know that that has translated for readers means so much to me. And for those who haven't heard me talk about it before, it is a retelling or a reimagining of Arthurian legend, but from the perspective of the Lady of the Lake, who in this case goes by the name Vivian, and the time that she spends at Camelot. And besides just being really excited for the book to be out there in the world, it's just so exciting to have a physical copy of it. I mean, I've got a couple of physical copies of it, if I'm being honest, because it's just so beautiful. I love that it ended up getting this gold foiling. Like, that feels so special. The amount of times I have said, I picked this book up because of the foiling and it grabbed my attention, and I'm like, now I have a book with gold foiling. Like, that is just such an honour. And then little details inside the manuscript, seeing them printed means so much. I included a reading playlist of the music I listened to whilst writing this book, and I think makes a great accompaniment. I've got my little cast of characters there and everything else that's a part of it. Every single word, really, just seeing it in print means so much. So yeah, I had to mention it. I had to. And then the same goes for these two little volumes. So these are my latest contributions to the McMillan Collector's Library series, which is a range of classics published by McMillan, and I've been editing volumes for them for a few years, compiling myths, fairy tales and folk tales into like one, and these are on specific subjects, one of which is mermaids, sirens and selkies, and the other being fairies, elves and sprites. So in both cases I have brought together a variety of classic tales from various different countries and cultures that deal with either fairies or mermaids and their kin, and package them into one volume to hopefully give you a bit of a sense of how diverse these creatures can be in folklore and mythology. I have included some probably better known tales in these, like of course we have The Little Mermaid. I had to include Hans Christian Andersen's Little Mermaid, but also some stories that I hope are a little bit more obscure. It definitely took me some scouring to find and that you won't have heard before, so hopefully there's a nice like selection there for you of familiar and unfamiliar. As always, alongside the stories themselves, I've written introductions to the books. So in both cases I've written up a little bit of an introduction to the creatures and kind of what role they've played in myth and folklore throughout the years, and how exactly we define them, and then also shorter introductions to each story to give a little bit of background to the author and where the story comes from. So yeah, another two volumes I'm incredibly proud of, and I hope you will enjoy reading as much as I enjoyed, well, both reading and editing. And with that we come to the end of the book haul. I hope you don't mind that the last three books are my own, but there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'd love to hear from you if you've read any of these books, if you've got them on your TBRs, which ones you're most excited for, which ones you think I will enjoy reading the most. If you've read any of them, what did you think? In fact, I'd particularly love any recommendations you might have for either manhwa or light novels. I'm really looking to get into light novels, so let me know if you've got any recommendations for those. But until next time, happy reading, and I'll see you all again soon. Bye everyone!